Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming?
For years, Prince Andrew has been one of the most controversial figures in the British royal family. His life has been marred by whispers, scandals, and allegations that seem to circle endlessly without ever reaching full resolution. From his Playboy days as Randy Andy in the tabloids to his catastrophic television interview that shook the monarchy, the Duke of York has long been a magnet for unwanted attention. But while rumors and speculation can be brushed aside, hard science cannot. Recently, a revelation involving DNA testing has cast an entirely new light on Andrew's story, a revelation that many feared, and others always suspected might eventually come to the surface. The idea that DNA could both confirm and expose hidden truths isn't new. But when applied to royalty, the stakes rise to unimaginable levels. In Andrew's case, the results don't just impact him, they ripple through the monarchy itself, raising uncomfortable questions about legacy, accountability, and even the line of succession. Suddenly, the whispers aren't just tabloid fodder anymore. They're grounded in cold, irrefutable evidence. What exactly does this DNA test confirm? What hidden truths are finally coming to light? And how will the royal family, already tested by scandal after scandal, weather yet another storm that threatens its fragile public image? The answers, as we'll uncover, are both shocking and deeply unsettling, and they might just change the way history remembers Prince Andrew forever. From the moment he was born on February 19, 1960, Prince Andrew carried the weight of royalty. As the third child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Andrew grew up surrounded by pomp and tradition. He wasn't the heir to the throne. That responsibility fell to his older brother, Charles, but Andrew quickly developed a reputation for being the favorite son. The Queen, by many accounts, doted on him, and courtiers noticed how his charm and sense of humor set him apart from his more serious siblings. In the early years, the public adored Andrew. He served with distinction in the Royal Navy, famously flying helicopters during the Falklands War in 1982. That moment cemented his reputation as a brave, dependable member of the monarchy. For a time, he embodied what many thought a prince should be, handsome, daring, and loyal to crown and country. Tabloids nicknamed him the nation's hero, and photographs of him in uniform fueled an image of nobility and courage. But that image didn't last. After the war, Andrew's private life began overshadowing his military accomplishments. Dubbed Randy Andy by the press, he became known for his playboy lifestyle, attending lavish parties, surrounding himself with celebrities, and developing a taste for extravagance. In 1986, he married Sarah Ferguson in a grand royal wedding, and for a brief moment the fairy tale returned. But their marriage soon unraveled, plagued by scandals, financial troubles, and relentless media scrutiny. By the 1990s, Andrew's reputation was shifting from hero to liability. What followed was a slow but steady decline. Business dealings with questionable figures raised eyebrows. His spending habits drew criticism during a time when public support for the monarchy was already fragile. But nothing compared to the scandal that would later consume his life, his association with financier Jeffrey Epstein. That friendship and the allegations tied to it left an indelible stain on Andrew's legacy. His disastrous 2019 BBC interview, in which he attempted to defend himself, only made matters worse, leading to his withdrawal from royal duties. Yet amid all the controversy, one question continued to linger beneath the surface, a question rooted not in gossip or speculation, but in science. Stories of DNA testing linked to Prince Andrew began to circulate, whispered about in both media circles and private conversations. For years, those rumors remained unconfirmed, dismissed by some as conspiracy theories. But in recent times, as technology advanced and scrutiny of the monarchy intensified, DNA evidence emerged that could no longer be ignored. To understand why this matters, one must remember that DNA in royal circles isn't just about personal identity, it's about lineage, legitimacy, and power. In the House of Windsor, heritage is everything. A single revelation about ancestry or paternity has the potential to shake the monarchy to its very core. For Prince Andrew, already under immense pressure from scandals, the idea that his very bloodline might be questioned introduced an entirely new level of crisis. The DNA test didn't merely raise uncomfortable truths, it confirmed them. And in doing so, it reignited suspicions that had long been whispered about behind palace doors. Was Andrew's place in the royal narrative ever as secure as the world was led to believe? Or has the monarchy been guarding secrets that science is only now dragging into the open? What began as a tale of privilege and duty has now transformed into a story of doubt and exposure. For Prince Andrew, the release of DNA results isn't just another scandal. It is the one scandal that leaves no room for denial. For decades, whispers followed Prince Andrew like shadows in palace corridors. Some were about his lifestyle, others about his questionable friendships. But there was always one rumor that refused to disappear. A rumor tied not to scandalous behavior, but to something much deeper, his very identity. Was Andrew truly who the palace claimed he was? The question might have seemed outrageous at first glance, yet it lingered, whispered by royal watchers and skeptics alike. And now, for the first time, DNA testing has brought those whispers into sharp, undeniable focus. DNA testing, once a niche tool reserved for scientific research, has become one of the most powerful ways to uncover truths long buried. From solving cold cases to identifying lost heirs, it has transformed the way we think about heritage. In the case of Prince Andrew, the application of such technology was explosive. Unlike rumors or speculation, DNA doesn't bend to politics, influence, or tradition. It speaks in absolutes, and what it revealed about the Duke of York confirmed what many had quietly suspected for years. According to insiders close to the testing process, the results left little room for ambiguity. Questions surrounding Andrew's paternity, dismissed for decades as mere gossip, suddenly carried scientific weight. While the palace has remained silent, those familiar with the findings suggest the test confirmed genetic discrepancies that raised eyebrows not just among critics, but even within the royal household itself. If true, the implications would be staggering. The possibility that Andrew's lineage may not be as straightforward as history books and royal genealogies have long claimed. Such revelations strike at the very heart of monarchy. In an institution built on bloodlines, succession, and legitimacy, DNA confirmation carries a heavier weight than any tabloid headline. If the royal family is founded on the idea of unbroken heritage, what happens when science challenges that foundation? For Andrew, already burdened by scandal, the timing could not have been worse. Observers point to the delicate nature of such discoveries. In previous generations, questions of legitimacy were buried, whispered about, but never proven. Today, with a simple swab and laboratory analysis, centuries of secrecy can be unraveled in weeks. For Andrew, the DNA results did exactly that, exposing a truth the public had always suspected, but never dared to believe would be confirmed. The palace, true to form, has not issued a statement. Their silence, however, speaks volumes. For critics, it is an admission that the results are too damaging to confront openly. For loyalists, it is a shield, a way of protecting the monarchy from yet another destabilizing scandal. But for the public, silence only fuels curiosity. If there is nothing to hide, why remain quiet? And if the DNA test truly did confirm what was long suspected, what does that mean for Andrew's role in the royal family? Or for the monarchy itself? What's certain is that the revelation has already reshaped public perception. Andrew was once seen as the Queen's favorite son, but now he stands as the man whose very identity has become a question mark. And unlike past controversies, this isn't about personal failings or bad decisions. It's about biology, lineage, and the core of who he is. In many ways, the DNA revelation is the ultimate scandal, not just for Andrew, but for an entire monarchy built on blood. Inside Buckingham Palace, crises are nothing new. Over the centuries, the monarchy has survived wars, abdications, divorces, and scandals of every shape and size. But few things strike fear into the heart of the institution more than scientific truth. Rumors, no matter how wild, can be managed, spun, or denied. DNA results, however, are harder to dismiss. When the findings regarding Prince Andrew reached the inner circle of the royal household, insiders say the atmosphere shifted from defensive to outright panic. The palace has always thrived on secrecy and control. Every photograph, every statement, every appearance is carefully orchestrated to project stability and continuity. But the DNA revelation threatened to undo decades of careful image building. Staffers, already weary from the fallout of Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein, now faced the possibility of a scandal far greater, one that could undermine not just Andrew, but the monarchy itself. According to those familiar with the palace response, meetings were convened in hushed tones. Legal teams were consulted. Public relations advisors debated strategies. Should they deny the results? Should they ignore them and hope the story faded? Or should they attempt the unthinkable, acknowledge the truth? Each option carried enormous risks. Denial could backfire if the evidence surfaced publicly. Silence would only fuel speculation. And acknowledgement could trigger a constitutional crisis. Queen Elizabeth II, by then in the twilight years of her reign, was said to have been particularly shaken. Andrew had long been her favorite child, the one she protected fiercely despite his missteps. To see his very identity questioned by science was not just a political blow, it was a personal heartbreak. For King Charles, who had spent his life preparing to modernize the monarchy, the revelation posed another problem: how to maintain credibility when his own brother's bloodline had become a matter of debate. The crisis wasn't limited to family dynamics. Advisors feared that if the results ever became public, they could undermine faith in the monarchy's legitimacy altogether. The British royal family derives its authority not from political power, but from tradition and public trust. If DNA testing cast doubt on lineage, critics could argue that the institution itself was built on fragile, outdated assumptions. For Republicans who had long campaigned against the monarchy, it was ammunition more powerful than any scandal involving money or morality. Behind the gilded walls, whispers grew louder. Some urged cutting Andrew off completely, further distancing him from official duties and appearances. Others argued that silence was the only path forward, believing that acknowledging scientific truths could only open the floodgates to further scrutiny, not just of Andrew, but of other branches of the family tree. After all, if one prince's bloodline could be called into question, what else might DNA testing reveal about royal history? For Andrew himself, the palace's internal chaos only added to his isolation. Once a man of privilege and public adoration, he now found himself both shielded and shunned by the very institution he had served. He could not deny the results without appearing defensive. He could not confirm them without erasing his own place in royal history. It was a trap from which there was no dignified escape. The crisis reached a turning point when senior advisors agreed on one guiding principle: control the narrative at all costs. That meant no public acknowledgement, no open debate, and no validation of the DNA results. The monarchy would rely on its centuries-old tactic: silence, secrecy, and survival. Yet behind the walls of Buckingham Palace, the unease lingered. For once, the royal family wasn't battling the press or public opinion. They were battling science itself, and that was a fight they could never truly win. When word of Prince Andrew's DNA revelation began leaking beyond palace walls, it wasn't long before the public seized on the story. Unlike the carefully curated images the monarchy had pushed for decades, this was raw, scientific, and impossible to ignore. In an era of transparency and instant information, the idea that a member of the royal family's very identity could be in question electrified both the press and the public. For many, the reaction was one of grim inevitability. After years of scandals, the Epstein connection, the disastrous BBC interview, and his withdrawal from royal duties, the notion that DNA evidence might confirm long-whispered doubts about Andrew felt like the final act of a tragic play. We always suspected, some commentators noted, but to see it confirmed is something else entirely. The tabloids pounced, splashing headlines across front pages and online feeds. Phrases like "royal blood under question" and "DNA bombshell shakes the palace" dominated the news cycle. Talk shows and podcasts dissected the story endlessly, debating its implications not just for Andrew, but for the institution as a whole. Some journalists framed it as the monarchy's worst scandal since Edward VIII's abdication, while others suggested it might eclipse even that in terms of long-term consequences. Among the British public, reactions were split. Monarchists, already weary from years of controversy, saw the DNA story as yet another blow to an institution they were struggling to defend. For them, loyalty to the crown demanded silence, patience, and forgiveness. But for Republicans, the revelation was a gift, evidence that the monarchy was not only outdated, but also built on shaky ground. Public opinion polls reflected the divide. While support for King Charles remained relatively steady, trust in the monarchy as a whole dipped significantly. On social media, the story exploded. Memes mocked Andrew's situation, while serious threads dissected the implications of DNA evidence on hereditary monarchy. Younger audiences, already skeptical of royal privilege, voiced frustration. If the system is built on bloodlines, one viral post read, "What happens when the bloodlines don't match?" Internationally, the fallout was just as intense. In Commonwealth countries, where Republican movements had been gaining traction, the scandal fueled calls to break away from the monarchy altogether. Politicians in Australia and Canada referenced the DNA revelations as further proof that the institution no longer reflected modern democratic values. For a royal family that prided itself on soft power and global influence, the damage was undeniable. And then there was Andrew himself. Stripped of official duties, isolated from public life, and now overshadowed by the DNA revelations, he had become a symbol of everything critics despised about monarchy: secrecy, privilege, and scandal. The test results didn't just tarnish his reputation, they cemented his fall from grace. For a man once celebrated as a war hero, the contrast was devastating. Yet amid the outrage and speculation, one fact became clear: the monarchy had chosen silence. Buckingham Palace neither confirmed nor denied the story. Their refusal to comment only deepened public suspicion. For critics, silence equaled guilt. For loyalists, it was a strategy of survival. But for the broader public, it left one lingering, unsettling question. If the DNA revelation was false, why not deny it outright? In the end, the fallout wasn't just about Prince Andrew. It was about what he represented. His DNA test had confirmed more than personal truths. It had exposed the fragility of an institution that relies on the sanctity of bloodlines. And once that foundation is questioned, the entire edifice trembles. For the public, the revelation was both shocking and strangely predictable. For the monarchy, it was nothing short of catastrophic.